Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our Workday Chats today. I'm Purnima Farah, and I lead machine learning product management for Workday HCM. I will be your host for today's Workday Chats. If you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the comments below so that our team can answer them as we go through this discussion. As you know, we are being faced with an incredible change on a daily basis that has taught us all that we have to be ready for change, whether it's planned or unplanned. And business agility, therefore, becomes even more critical, not just in terms of responding and recovering from the latest global events, but also in terms of just thriving in the face of new opportunities, finding ways to do more with less, finding ways to ensure that our organizations are safe and nurtured in terms of both the present as well as the future. So we're looking forward to an amazing discussion today with two fantastic panelists. I'm joined by Patrick Harrington, who is my friend and colleague, and he leads the machine learning engineering organization for HCM as its senior director, and Greg Wirt, who is the HR automation and AI lead at Deloitte Consulting. We want to bring this discussion to you today in terms of talent optimization. And we want to talk about how machine learning can be used to help identify talent being optimized. So with that, Patrick, let's go ahead and get us started with you. Can you maybe share a little bit based on just your general experience, both at Workday and elsewhere, on how machine learning can be leveraged to provide a better experience for workers?
Yeah, and thanks, Purnima, for the wonderful introduction and kind of added color. I'm really happy to be here today to talk about this. I mean, when we look at the rate of change across the economy, where new skill sets are being introduced, traditional occupations may being amplified or changed over time, the need to really quantify these changes, the demand of new skill sets, against the supply of opportunities, workers, consultants, et cetera, intrinsically tees up a data-driven learning problem where machine learning and artificial intelligence are the tools in the toolbox to be used to help understand, such that after understanding kind of these dynamics, we at Workday can help productize and provide value back to our customer base and their workers to take an otherwise seemingly maybe chaotic system and bring kind of some structure to where folks can understand where the economy and opportunities are headed, such that they can reskill or upskill into these up and coming careers where they may be more lucrative or quality of life factors or, so I'll pause there. This touches across a large portfolio from Workday that Purnima and I work closely against, which is on recruiting or learning, or we mentioned talent optimization, as well as workforce management. So this touches on all parts of human capital management that we're seeing these days, and we're really excited to talk about, how Workday is positioning itself to address these challenges on behalf of our, the largest employers, across the globe, and we're really passionate about that.
Yeah, that's great, Patrick. I think really interesting overview of kind of what's happening at a macro level. And Purnima, you asked about the talent experience specifically. So you can kind of imagine a world where machine learning backed by the right structures and data could make navigating the talent experience in your organization more personal and dynamic. And I'll share two kind of quick illustrative examples of how that could potentially play out. The first is for an employee that is trying to move into a new job. Maybe they have their whole career plan within your organization kind of mapped out, very professional oriented. What if they had the ability to express an interest in that new job and they're instantly provided with a personalized development plan that features trainings, experiences, and then networking, right? Other people within the organization that they should build relationships with, the different things that they need to focus on in order to reach their goals. That plan is not only based on where they want to go, but it's also contextualized using their current skills and experiences. It knows enough about who they are as an employee to be able to make it really tailored. And you add to that by integrating the different resources that'll help them, execute that plan, bringing in the right training courses, the right developmental opportunities, and now you've created a game-changing talent experience. I think another example of that, a little bit different but related, I think it's a twist on that first example, is maybe the employee doesn't have a clear plan for their career. They don't know what they want to do next. I know I've been there. And instead, they're focused on doing great work, building skills, gaining new experiences. And over time, that person may outgrow their current role and not even realize that they've become qualified for another opportunity within the company. So what if you could proactively, dynamically prompt people to consider those roles based on the skills and experiences that they're accumulating on the job, without them ever having to seek out that opportunity. I think it's really powerful stuff when we think about how machine learning could be applied to the talent experience, and it has implications for how we think about workforce planning, how we think about succession planning, and just talent management in general. So it's a really interesting topic for me, and glad I could be here to share some insights with the group.
That's a really good point, Greg. Thank you so much for the insights there. And you talked about personalization across the entire talent optimization, both at the organization level and as well as at the individual level, which is super exciting. And I'd love to hear more about that from you in terms of how skills play a role in there for that personalization, and how Deloitte thinks about that today.
Sure. Yeah. No. And I share the same view. I think of skills as kind of the building blocks for how we define roles within the organization, how we define teams within the organization, and as well how we look at people within the organization. Right. It's a set of attributes that we can use to better understand the workforce. So focusing on skills allows us to do a couple of things. One is we can be more agile with how we define and manage talent. We can be more agile with the types of personalized experiences that we can create. Historically, we've thought about personalization as understanding very basic tags about you. What job you're in, what location you're based out of, maybe what language you speak, your preferred language. And we've kind of driven your experience with different online tools, digital tools, based on those more static attributes. Skills are more dynamic in nature, right? So when we think about the agility that's demanded of organizations in today's world, managing that around skills can allow you to keep up with the business as workers change. Either they develop new skills or add to their experiences, or as expectations change, right? So maybe we need to push new skills out to the organization, add those to certain job profiles, certain roles, and use that as a way to drive the right behaviors and drive the right development within the organization. And I also, that agility, that flexibility, it's much easier to add a new skill that can be attributed across the organization to a variety of new jobs or roles, than it is to create and maintain a new job every time there's a change, right? So I think skills is a good way for us to balance the structure and controls of the job catalog with the fluidity and flexibility of just the nature of the changing workforce and changing world around us. I think historically skills have been more difficult to manage, at least relatively speaking, because of the volume of work that's associated with it, right? We've opened up, for employees to manage their own skills, but not everybody does that. It's hard to incentivize people to keep up their profiles. It's a huge burden for HR to try to take that on and maintain skills. But machine learning and other emerging solutions actually make it easier because you can automate a lot of that administration. So there's a whole new era, I think, of us being able to tap into the use of skills to drive personalization and also to just promote more agility across the workforce.
Absolutely, and I love how you described it as change change management rather, both from the business perspective as well as the individual perspective. And we know that at Workday we found, on average, across various organizations, maybe we have 1 in 4 workers adding skills to their profile, but then the machine learning inference can really drive that number much higher. So Patrick, I'd love to hear a little bit from you about, the value of a well-defined skills ontology, as well as how we think about skills-based machine learning at Workday.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the color from Deloitte's perspective. I mean, Workday has invested heavily in what's called the Workday Skills Cloud. It's over 220,000 skills that form an ontology, as well as relationships to each other And the question is, what do we do with that to address the topics that we've been talking about, right? Like that in isolation is fine, but it's really where the rubber hits the road of how does it make an employee's arc in their career more fruitful? How does it make the employer enable a more rich kind of resource allocation into new emerging kind of opportunities? And so that's what, you know, we work closely on together to bring to life as products. You know, so when we talk about, you know, we alluded to not everyone is managing their skills. I think that's what, you know, Greg, you alluded to, and Purnima mentioned as well. But where machine learning comes into play is a real simple. The first one is, you know, take Workday as a product. You know, we largely have your resume, the job profile that you're doing. You get feedback. And let's say, you know, some smaller percent of people are adding their skills explicitly to their profiles and whatnot, or a candidate during the application process. We have many customers with, you know, high volume use cases with tens of thousands of applicants per day. And so it's really how do we mine the skills that are lurking in their resume, the job description, any feedback that they've, that someone's been bestowed upon them, such that we can operate at a coverage across all workers of nearly 100% by leveraging techniques in natural language processing with the Workday Skills Cloud to extract skills from Greg's resume, separate from Patrick's resume, separate from Purnima, without us having to do any work. And what does that really give us? It allows the employer to have a holistic understanding of their organizational skill sets. And then they can start orienting any business change management activities against that first state of measurement, right? And so the foundational layer of first being able to understand that scale, and at scale is the key word here, of skill signature of workers, teams, organizations, locations, and companies at large, right? And then we can start tying in the navigability component to the equation, which is how do you get workers from A to B, right? And B, you know, A is where they're at in the current skill occupation set, and B could be where they want to go or where the employer wants them to go and needs them to go to kind of meet the changing demands of, you know, an ever-changing economy. So, you know, tying in the skills ontology and the skills cloud representation in isolation is a good first step, but really how it's utilized across the enterprise is where we start seeing, you know, extraordinary value being created.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the skills ontology is a good first step. It's an accelerator. The Workday Skills Cloud, great example of that. But it's how you use that data, right? Because what it does is it really creates a new rich data set that a lot of organizations have not had in the past because it's been way too difficult to create and to maintain. So now what do you do with that rich data set? I think that's the key.
And let's talk about the now what do you do, right? Because a lot of it, when it comes to talent optimization, as we've both, you've both been saying, it starts with the understanding of what the skills are in-house as well as where the gaps are. And then from that, in terms of the needs of the business, we can start to determine where the acquisition of new skills can be. And Patrick, you know, the products that we have built in the past year and a half around the skills have really run the gamut around personalized recommendations for workers via gigs, mentors, learning. So can you talk us through a little bit of how you think about that from a machine learning perspective in terms of why Workday, you know, building that type of skills-based machine learning to build that personalized recommendation is the right solution for the enterprise market?
Yeah, and this is, I mean, we're at the frontier of where a lot of changes around education, learning, reskilling are happening. Everyone is unique, right? You know, enterprises, teams, organizations are, you know, a technicolor, diverse nature of people's backgrounds, skill sets, educational attributes, et cetera. And so when we talk about being able to quantify skills gaps, where we're in a position to say, you know, you're doing great as you are today, but as this role evolves, there may be a gap. And the question is, okay, we know there's a gap and we can identify that using techniques in machine learning. The question is, what do we do to close these gaps, right? And acknowledging that lifelong learning, reskilling is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Machine learning allows us to drill into the individual in a personalized manner and extract a personalized curriculum that could be multimodal across learning to close the skills gap, We talked about mentors. That's a huge component. But we've also talked about the exposure to short-term projects and gigs that in conjunction with each other, there's a journey that's personalized to every worker based upon where they are today and where they need to go. And those are attributes that even our large institutions around education don't necessarily drill into that personalized manner yet. So it's really exciting to see what machine learning is doing to drive personalized kind of educational reskilling efforts. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And I think that brings, from the enterprise side of the coin, a large degree of efficiency gains when you're talking on, to individuals uniquely versus a one-size-fits-all. And so it's really exciting to see where this area is going and how our customers are uptaking some of these solutions.
Sorry, absolutely. And I think the one size fits all, as you said, not being the case, and the personalization can be both at the individual level, the org level, as well as where applicable, the overall ecosystem level. So Greg, would love to hear how Deloitte then thinks about it from, both skills acquisition as well as development perspective. Where do you begin, and then how do you build on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is kind of the age-old talent question, right? Are you going to buy versus build? And
right.
Organizations have wrestled with this for forever, really. They've traditionally relied on anecdotal evidence to support one philosophy over another, or they use really small data sets, right? You often hear managers say things like, well, our top performer on the team came from the accounting department, so let's go hire more people from there. And you might get lucky doing it this way, but probably not the most reliable or accurate approach if you looked at it on a long enough timeline. Interestingly, and Patrick mentioned this earlier, there's always been the potential to use data to solve this problem, but many organizations haven't been able to figure out how. They either don't have access to reliable information, or it's too labor intensive and costly to do the analysis or to do the analysis at scale. So, emerging technologies like machine learning and other forms of artificial intelligence open up the door to take a more data-driven approach. But there's some irony here, right? The irony is that the proliferation of machine learning and artificial intelligence is also one of the reasons why this is such an important topic. Machines are now working alongside humans to form what we call at Deloitte super teams, which is demanding the need
Nice.
for a whole new set of skills, right? It's a whole new set of skills that are going to come ushered in with this next wave of technology and disruption, and that's to help people collaborate effectively with bots, with technology. And interestingly, we do a big global study every year called our Human Capital Trends Report, and we surveyed people on this topic in particular. We asked them, how ready are you to redesign jobs based on the proliferation of artificial intelligence or the introduction of artificial intelligence within your organization? And only 7% said they were very, very ready to deal with that challenge. It was our lowest out of all of our human capital trends in terms of readiness. So there's absolutely something here that HR needs to address. I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all answer. You mentioned that. It's not you're going to buy or build. It's probably going to be some combination of the two. But what machine learning and more effective skills management allows you to do is making a more informed decision about which strategy to take.
I agree. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the organization readiness and preparation, which is something obviously as product managers, we think about a lot as well. How do we get our customers ready? What information do they need on the machine learning aspect? How do we get feedback from them? So Greg, what have you seen in terms of, getting organizations started in terms of thinking about machine learning, pairing, if you will, with the human aspect of workforce?
It's a good question, and I think it's worth kind of providing the disclaimer that most organizations are still pretty early in this journey, right? So while we have some great examples of how this has worked and worked well for organizations, we're not all the way there yet, right? When you talk about making the transition to the cloud, we have so many examples that prove out that concept. We know there's value here, but there's not as many great examples that we can point to learn from. But I think, where should organizations begin? I would start by establishing the clear vision. What is it that you want to achieve? What are the business outcomes you're trying to create? What are your priorities? And make sure to involve your customers in that discussion. Don't let this feel like an HR initiative. This needs to feel like a business initiative, and that tone needs to be set right out of the gate. Otherwise, I think you're in for a bumpy road. I also, we've kind of hinted on it throughout the conversation so far, but data is at the backbone of everything we've talked about here. So I think before you go too far down the path, I think it's important to kind of do an assessment of the data, make sure you've got the right data, that it's got high data integrity, that is meaningful, in order to enable machine learning. A lot of organizations have kind of some pre-work data cleanup to do before they can really take advantage of this new technology.
The ground truth data that we have available to us from Workday perspective, obviously provides us with very rich insights into organization. What advice would you have for organizations in terms of, their journey on both the data readiness and the, machine learning readiness?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's that old, adage of kind of garbage in, garbage out around data integrity, right? And we want to make sure that, in terms of developing policies, that affect, different parts of the business, workers, et cetera, that, we're operating at the highest standards. The nature from Workday's perspective, it is a system of record instance for, oftentimes for all of our customers. And both, there's a lot of responsibilities that come with that. It is not, a third-party solution per se. It's really kind of core of understanding your workforce and your candidates and your learning content and the authoring of jobs. And so the ability to have a pulse on kind of the current state of affairs across the entire enterprise, drilled down back to the personalization theme, the individual workers, and being able to build aggregations up through teams, organizations, locations, and ultimately the company at large, is a function of the representation of us as data. And by data here, we should be concrete in what we're referring to here. Oftentimes, this has to do with our job profiles, our resumes, our CVs, our feedback that we interact with others, understanding learning content, which, skills are closely subsumed into, different learning content that may, a particular customer may have. And so it's really holistically how that data comes together, not as silos, not like, recruiting has data over here, HR has this certain talent representation over there. It's really the holistic where it comes together, where you get that one is greater than 3 scenario. And that's really, I think, where I see the business case you alluded to, Greg, kind of not just necessarily an HR initiative. It's really kind of the HR, people in purpose, and the business owners coming together, working as a team with rigorous data, where machine learning is kind of the distillation of how to bring sense to that data. It drives desirable business outcomes. And that's what's really exciting, right? Because this technology is used across things that we see, from autonomous driving to our interaction patterns of consumer tech. A lot of the approaches are pretty similar, but they're applied to a really interesting problem of making companies and their workforces more efficient. And so it's really exciting to kind of see how that the intrinsic data manifests in business value.
Yeah, I completely agree, Patrick. And the way you're describing it in terms of having the anytime feedback within Workday enabled, job profiles, looking at learning data, all of that really then starts to give us this comprehensive view into the organization, and minimizes, as Greg was saying earlier, also the amount of work that it would take in terms of a worker coming in and themselves adding details about them. Though obviously we want to provide those controls as well, so that if there is more that that they want to share about themselves with the organization, that we can leverage that on the machine learning side. The last bit here is also the cold start problem, right? What we often see is that with all of this data, with all of the initiatives in place at the organization level, it may still not be the case that the updates would be fast enough. Though we know that at Workday, we have actually been able to, make strides both in terms of how quickly we can deliver recommendations, as well as how we are able to update them as well. So Patrick, can you talk a little bit through sort of how that pipeline works? And then Greg, I'd love to get your thoughts on how the recommendations changing on a more frequent basis can have an impact at the organization level.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, any machine learning problem deals with what Purnima alluded to, the cold start problem. And so just for folks, what does that mean? Cold start problem means on day one of usage, what value can I extract from the data I have with a technique like machine learning and artificial intelligence or natural language processing to bring product and business value from such? What's really interesting given the nature of Workday and our relationship with customers as being system of record, there is a lot that you get on day one at the cold start component. We talked earlier in the conversation around the ability, prior to your teleworkers even disclosing anything about their skill sets explicitly, we are able to mine the rich data that comprises the entire workforce to build signatures of what their skill sets actually are, and then rolling them up to teams and organizations and understanding skills gaps prior to anyone having to tell us anything. But the second the mechanics of the usage of these products that are activated by machine learning kick in, there's a feed-forward effect of value creation, of this additional data being churned out from the usage of these patterns that drive, monotonically increasing benefits to our end users. And so it's really exciting to kind of see the ability to what we can do on a cold start solution. But as these products are being more well utilized, as well as across different product areas, how does recruiting touch on talent management in the buy and build trade-off, right? How do we talk through the holistic nature of bringing in learning, mentorship, as well as project exposure as part of a holistic journey of reskilling? And so the theme that we talk a lot about at Workday, and this power of one, right? That's an expression we talk about. It really hits on kind of this cold start and usage pattern of uptake of machine learning driven products, that only in that holistic sense do we really start seeing the value that we tend to put forth in our own life around when we want to pursue some alternative new career. It's really not just one single source of medium that's really kind of informing us on some new skill set. We're working our networks, our professional networks. We're going back to school per se, pursuing our own learning content. And so we really do try to bring that in at scale in a personalized manner. And we do see this burn-in effect over time where it gets better and better and better. And so it's exciting to see what we can do on day one, as well as, the accelerations that happen on, as products are well utilized.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Purnima, just to answer the other question that you posed, I give this advice to clients anytime they're starting an artificial intelligence initiative, which is to think big, start small, and set expectations clearly. Because, to Patrick's point, you may not get the full value out of this right away. It's a journey, right? You're not going to unlock all use cases and all benefits of applying machine learning to your workforce the second you flip the switch. And what that means, and right, how you deal with sort of changes over time, is that this is a new capability for HR to grow, right? It's a new muscle that we haven't had to exercise yet. So, start to think about what are the new skills that you need to kind of cultivate within the HR function in order to capitalize on technologies like machine learning, conversational AI, chatbots, RPA. There's a whole wave of technologies that I don't think HR is fully harnessed yet. And they need architects. They need people that understand how to use these new digital tools, not only to deploy them in the first place and to reach a place where you're deploying them at scale, which is really the point where they create transformative value, but also so that when the business moves left, our machine learning and our enabling technologies are moving right along with it in lockstep. And that as the business's problems and challenges change and shift, that HR solutions can change and shift along with it. And we're keeping pace because we have these new tools in our toolbox, as Patrick said at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think just to add to what Greg said, which I think is spot on. A lot of what Greg, the way I kind of internalize them that Greg is, these are not nice to have solutions. They're more, right? And I think what machine learning sometimes in industry gets referred to, it may be a nice to have. Well, that's not necessarily the case, because these are business critical decisions, right?
Absolutely.
So it's really it is the right tool, right, to kind of enable the business transformation that is needed to confront the challenges of an ever-changing and increasingly accelerating economy.
That's right.
And so it's really that rate of change. It does allow you to kind of operate more rigorously at scale in a personalized manner. And those are must-have, right? Those aren't nice. Right?
That's exactly right. As the rate of change accelerates, there's no way HR can keep up without introducing these tools and these technologies. It's just not possible.
Absolutely, and we have a ton of customer data in terms of the value that machine learning is already generating for them. And I think this discussion is only beginning. There is so much more that we could say here. And I think the key for all of us is really going to be, one, machine learning is critical to your business. Two, Greg, I love how you summarized it. Think big, start small, be thoughtful about what your goals are. And then Patrick, the data problem that you described, as well as how we solve for it at Workday, is I think going to be very critical to how we can serve our customers best. So thank you both for sharing your viewpoints. Thank you to our audience today. It's been great to see the questions coming in on chat. We appreciate your time as well as your input. So please feel free to join us for the next episode of Workday Chats as well. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you for joining this month's LinkedIn Live Chat. We appreciate your participation, and we hope that you've had the chance to explore our on-demand replay of Conversations for a Changing World, covering topics like digital acceleration, belonging and diversity, planning in times of uncertainty, and the skills movement. The full program is available for replay on demand through October 31st. We also have some additional relevant resources on our website to help you dive deeper into the topics you're most interested in and explore how Workday solutions can support your efforts. We hope you'll check them out. Thank you.